How's it going, everybody? Got another fly tying video for you. This one's going to be for a real quick and simple pattern. It's always been one of my favorite patterns. I've caught a lot of fish on it. Fresh and salt water, you can just vary up the colors and the materials a little bit and imitate a lot of things. The one I'm going to show you tonight is the Rabbit Strip Gurgler. This one is still in pretty good shape. It's been chewed up quite a bit, but it's still very fishable. I mean, this one's caught a lot of fish. The Rabbit Strip version is what I tend to use in fresh water. It's a great fly for largemouth, smallmouth especially, because I like to skate in the current. They really do seem to kill it. The black is always one of the better colors for me, but you can tie it in a variety of colors. Without further ado, we'll get started. All you're going to need for this fly is really only 2 or 3 materials. The first material is just your simple sheet foam you can get from a craft store. A sheet this big is usually about 99 cents, maybe $1.50. You want to cut 2 skinny pieces. I've already prepped them here, but they're glued together using Loctite gel. All you do is cut 2 pieces about the width of the gap of the hook. Always cut them longer than you need. I would say start out with them being twice the length of the hook shank, because you can always cut it to the length you need at the end. And after you've glued them together, I usually, trim up the edges, make them nice and clean, and then taper one end off to being fairly skinny, because that's going to help us in tying it in. The other material you're going to need is rabbit strip, preferably to match the color of the body. I mean, don't have to, but I'm going to be using the solid black today. This is the Magnum strip. This is what I use for the tail. The Magnum strip just means it's cut straight down the body, so the hair isn't trying to lay to one side. You can see it lines up nice. For the body, when we wrap it, I like to use cross cut. You don't have to. If you want the fly to be a little bushier, you can use Magnum strip and wrap it, and it'll be a little bit more of a bushy fly. So the thread that I like to use is a 210 denier flat wax nylon, just in solid black. It's a good strong thread. You can use it for a lot of stuff. Start your thread on the hook shank, work it towards the back, snip off your tag, then take your Magnum strip, measure it out. I like it to be maybe 1.5 times the length of the hook shank, maybe even a little shorter. Yeah, that's probably gonna be a little long. I'll cut a little bit off. You gotta remember, when this is in the water, you got all that hair coming off the end of the skin as well. Another thing I do, it's probably doesn't matter really, but you can taper the end of the skin off to a point just so it's a little bit smoother, a little bit sharper tail on it. I think it makes it look a little better, but once again, that's probably just me being picky. You can see what I did there. I like to tie these flies really durable, so before I tie in any strip like that, I like to put a dot of that Loctite gel. The reason I use the gel is because you can see it stays in place. It doesn't move or try and goop up and fall off the, because it's really liquidy. So lay that skin right on top of that dot you just made and get you 3 or 4 tight wraps, and once that skin kind of wraps around the hook and bites onto that glue, it's not going anywhere. Next, you want to take your pieces of foam that you prepped, just as they've been glued together. You can see that's 2 strips of foam glued together. Take the tapered end, tie that in. I usually tie it in about halfway up the taper. You don't really want to lock it in really tight because you can risk cutting through the foam. I kind of work it in, start out with soft wraps to keep it on the hook and then gradually tighten them up. Don't be afraid to wrap it in, more than you think you need to. It's not going to hurt anything because this is all going to get covered up anyway. You can see what we're going to do is fold it over. That's why I say don't tie it in really tight, because you're already going to fold it over and you risk cutting that foam. You got that tied in, just let that hang back. Now this is the part where I use the cross-cut rabbit, and that's just because I like the way the cross-cut rabbit is going to lay on top of itself, but you don't have to use cross-cut if you don't want to. Take the cross-cut rabbit. I usually don't put the glue in for the first tie-in point on these pieces, just because I'm going to glue every single tie-in point after that. I'm just going to cut. This piece is so long, I'm going to shorten it up so it's easier to work with. There we go. So now tie in your cross-cut rabbit right towards the back where you tied in, or where you finished tying in that foam. Tie that in good and tight. Then just bring your thread forward a little bit behind the eye. Then you can start wrapping. What you want to do, if you're using cross-cut, you'll notice the skin tries to go one direction, and you want to wrap it so that skin will lay on top of itself and the hair will lay back. Sometimes you have to twist it a little bit and to get it to work, but once you get it started, it should work fine. You want to just kind of gradually wrap it up the shank, and what I do in order to make these flies a lot more durable, I use this Loctite gel. As I wrap right on top of the hook shank right here, I put another dot of glue because the next piece of skin that goes over is going to bite into that glue. Don't worry so much if it gets a little bit of the rabbit fur with the glue, because this is going to cover everything up. And this one, a little bit of that glue came out, so I'll just go ahead and wrap right onto it. Another dot. You can see that hair lays out nice with the cross cut. Sometimes the Magnum strip, it kind of binds up because it's a whole lot of hair trying to go around in all different places, and it's just the skin's a lot thicker on the Magnum cut strips too, and the cross cut just helps with that. Keep putting those dots of glue as you wrap up. And I mean, you don't have to do it every single wrap. If you do it every other wrap, or you know, at the first and the last, that'll be just fine. But I'm a little OCD when it comes to making these things really, really durable. Like I said, that fly that I showed you at the beginning of the video, I've probably caught upwards of 20 fish on that one, I would say, and it's still easily in fishable condition. The foam's a little jacked up, but it'll still fish just fine. Getting to the end here, when you've got it all the way up to where your thread is, you can capture that last piece of skin. I've tied a bunch of these, so I know kind of how long of a piece I need. That helps. If you know, when it's your first one you've tied, I would just leave it on the long piece of crosscut, because crosscut comes in little strips, and I would leave it just on there so you're not wasting it, or you don't mess up and cut a piece too short and you won't be able to use it. I've got kind of this just fuzzy mess at the moment, and that's fine. You don't want to cut any of this hair out. What I like to do, you can take a toothbrush, dubbing brush, whatever, just brush it down on each side to get it out of the way. You can do it with your hands, but sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate. Brushing it usually helps a little bit. Got it all laid down. The reason we do that is because you got to bring the foam over top of it now. And that's why we moved our thread all the way up to the front to begin with. So now you've got a place to bite into your foam. Now you fold your foam over top of all that rabbit strip. I like to kind of leave a little bit of a bubble back here. If you fold it down tight, it'll work fine, but I like to leave it kind of slack. That takes a little bit of stress off of where you tied in the foam, less chance of you ripping it. And also, sometimes when you're pulling this fly, that little pocket right there will grab water and it'll spit bubbles behind the fly, and it looks really good. That is kind of what we're looking for, that little bit of an arch in the back. And you do one loose wrap, and as you pull, I like to kind of pinch the foam together to help it roll down, and then gradually, just like how you tied it in the first place, gradually get tighter. And I like to peek at the front of the fly just to make sure I'm keeping that foam right on top. You know, your foam's not lopsided and the fly doesn't try to roll on you. As you've got it bit down, you can, throw on 8 or 10 quick wraps to just lock it into place. And another thing I like to do, which actually helps this fly do what it's supposed to do, is fold up the nose, which you have here, and throw 8 or 10, maybe 15 wraps of thread behind the eye and under the nose. That will kind of help that nose stand up a little bit and helps it catch a little more water and make a little bit more noise. But this fly doesn't make a ton of noise in the first place, so it's just a nice subtle, not really a pop, just kind of a spitting sound. And jump your thread back to where we wrapped in the foam, and here you can whip finish. This head's usually small enough. If you like to whip finish with the tool, you can usually still do it. If you don't whip finish and you just half hitch, I would just do your half hitch finish under the head here on the hook eye, and it'll work all the same. Cut your tag end off, and all that's left to do is just coat the thread with whatever you like to use for head cement. I usually just use Sally Hansen's a clear fingernail polish. It works just fine. Some people use varnish. Super glue works with this fly, but you don't want to use anything too nasty, because I don't like using Zap-A-Gap because it likes to fog up on foam, and sometimes it heats the foam up and can actually melt it, and you don't want to do that. And I like to put a little bit on the underside too. There we go. Got a little bit in that piece of hair there. I'll wipe that off. And that's pretty much it. This head is a touch long. I don't like to leave the head that long. I usually cut it to, I don't really have it's kind of just an eyeball length for me, what I like. But that's usually how I like to finish them. A little bit shorter head. You can see that cross cut. I mean, I know people like to use the Magnum strip on gurglers sometimes, but that cross cut's plenty bushy. I mean, there's a lot of hair there. The benefit of this fly, I mean, I think they mistake it often for a mouse. I think it's got a really mousy looking profile to it when you use the Rabbit Strip. I guess they could really mistake it for anything, especially when it's solid black, because when they're underneath of it looking up, it could look like an injured bait fish stuck in the current. But when I'm tying them for saltwater, the same pattern, I just vary it up a little bit. Instead of Rabbit Strip, I'll actually use like a craft fur tail and maybe a hackle for the body. And sometimes I'll even put some crystal flash or like a pearl chenille under the body. Here's a white and orange one I used for saltwater. This one hadn't been fished yet. I've fished this color a lot, and it's a white, just random orange speckling. I don't think this even really matters, but it's white bucktail for the tail. So a little bit of gold flash and a grizzly hackle with a white pearl chenille underneath. And then if you wanted to tie kind of a shrimpy looking gurgler, this is one of my favorite ones. This has actually been a very productive fly for me on redfish and even a few speckled trout here and there. This is just tan craft store foam with another grizzly hackle, and right at the butt where the hook starts to bend, I did a little bit of orange pearl chenille, and this is tan or sand color, either one will work. Craft fur with some orange bars and some gold flash in it. And then a real popular color around Virginia with artificial baits is that black, gold, and orange combination. I've had some decent luck on that gurgler as well. This foam can be tough to find. It's a glitter foam, but this is just black craft store foam, that gold glitter, the tan with brown bars, craft fur for the tail, grizzly hackle, and that's just orange pearl chenille. This one's been chewed up quite a bit as well. That's it. It's a real simple fly. My two biggest colors for freshwater are solid black and solid white. I've had luck with a pink one. I've had luck with chartreuse. These, I mean, they're just a real simple fly. I always have them with me. I don't always throw them, but I do seem to usually catch fish when I throw them. They are a very productive fly and real simple to tie, something you can add to your lineup. If you like what you see, let us know, share, tell your friends. We'll be producing some more of these. This is going to be a regular thing. We're probably going to start having tying videos once a week. Occasionally, I might even be doing something live on our Facebook page, so that'd be something to look out for. But we'll be trying to release these the same day every week, the same time. So hope you enjoy, and tight lines.